Jai Hind and greetings to everyone. I am Dr. Chandan Kumar Kusum, Associate Professor working in Department of Prosthodontics and Crown and Bridge of Subharti Dental College and Hospital, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University, Meerut. Today's topic of discussion is the biomechanics of RPD design. Actually, it is a quite complex topic, but at the end of this e-lecture, we will be having a knowledge of why biomechanics is important for RPD. When should we apply this knowledge and how should we apply this acquired knowledge in order to give a properly designed RPD to provide proper function and aesthetics to patients. So at the undergraduate level, if I have to ask you, suppose a patient comes with edentulosum, how to proceed with? And most of the time answer would be, sir, make one impression and we'll get one cast. On that cast, we'll arrange the teeth wherever the natural teeth are missing and we'll do the wax up. If required, then we'll go for one small wire-like extension, which we'll call it as clasp, and ultimately we'll process it and we'll get one RPD. So simple, sir. What is the big deal about it? What we will get by this is called as temporary RPD and not the permanent RPD. Now, all of us must have seen this RPD. Whenever patient comes at undergraduate level, we always say that, okay, we'll make this type of RPD, but this is a completely temporary RPD. We cannot use it for a long period of time. Now, question is, why is it so? Why it is considered to be a temporary RPD? The answer lies in that it is totally supported by the underlying soft tissue and bone only, and it is not supported by the adjacent natural teeth which are present in patient's mouth. So what will happen if it is totally tissue supported and not tooth supported? So what happens if it is totally tissue supported? Whatever masticatory force will get generated through this RPD, that will totally get shifted to underlying soft tissue as well as bone. So for example, if suppose a patient generates 200 Newton of force during mastication, what will happen? The all 200 Newton of force will transmit through that RPD to underlying mucosa as well as to the bone. And if 200 Newton of force, just one example I'm giving you, amount is not specified, just an example that if 200 Newton of force is imparted to underlying soft tissue as well as bone, what will happen to underlying soft tissue and bone? They will start getting degenerated, bone will start getting resorbing. So long-term use of this RPD will further create a iatrogenic bone loss. And that is why this type of RPD is called as temporary RPD. Not only bone loss, we'll think about the mucosa which is entrapped between this hard acrylic and the bone. Consider that one patient which is wearing this for a long period of time, what will happen to the mucosa? Now mucosa is such a pliable, plight and the soft structure that it gets entrapped between this hard acrylic and the hard bone. So blood supply of that free gingiva or the mucosa will get compromised, and ultimately the free gingiva which is present around the tooth will start getting necrotized and the tooth will become recessed, the gum will become recessed and tooth will become necked. That is why this type of design is called as gum stripper also, because it strips the gum out of the tooth and makes the tooth naked. So the temporary RPD or acrylic RPD or gum stripper is a totally for the diagnosis or for limited use. It should not be advocated for prolonged use because of the above mentioned or just we mentioned that reason. So this type of RPD does not require proper designing. Wherever on the cast natural teeth are missing, you have to arrange the artificial teeth, and if required you have to provide two wire extension such as crab like extension which will engulf the natural dentition. So this type of RPD takes only retention from the adjacent tooth and not the support. Hence it is called as tissue supported temporary RPD or gum stripper. If we have to protect our bone from resorbing fast, if we have to last our bone longer, so we have to dissipate the occlusal forces. That part of the occlusal force should be borne by the adjacent natural dentition also, and part of the force should be borne by the uh, bone underneath the partially edentulous arch. So for that, what we have to do? We have to extend the part of RPD onto the tooth structure. So in this photograph, you can see that one small projection is present on the occlusal surface of both the premolars, the triangular type of structure, and that is called as rest. So by giving rest, what we are making this RPD seat not only onto the bone but also onto the natural adjacent dentition. So what will happen in this type of design of RPD? The force now will get divided into two structure. So if 200 Newton of force is being generated during mastication, part of 200, say 100 Newton of force, will be directed towards the underlying bone, and the remaining part of the force will get directed onto the natural dentition. So now what will happen? Now since the force amount got dissipated, so bone will take up that much of force, and it will not resolve, or it will resolve slower than the previous one. So this type of RPD, which takes support not only from the edentulous arch or edentulous part of the arch, but also from the natural dentition, is called as tooth and tissue supported RPD. Tooth and tissue supported RPD. And this type of RPD is considered to be a definitive RPD. That means this type of RPD can be given for a longer period of time. This type of RPD is considered as definitive or permanent type of RPD, because not much of iatrogenic bone loss will be seen in this type of RPD in comparison to the acrylic RPD what we saw previously. So by designing one RPD from totally tissue supported to both tooth and tissue supported, we can dissipate the bone. But at the same time, this design brings one inherent disadvantage. And that disadvantage we'll discuss later. But before that, we'll understand why some problem will get created. Now look at the diagram photograph which is towards your right side. So here the mucosa is there as well as the adjacent natural teeth are present. The mucosa's compressibility is, normally we consider, if it is a healthy mucosa, we say 1 to 2 millimeter of compression we see in healthy mucosa, whereas in periodontium we do not see much of compression. Periodontal membrane can get compressed only up to 0.25 mm or plus minus 0.1 mm. So that means there is differentiation in compressibility. So if any hard structure which lies both on the tooth as well as onto the mucosa, what will happen to this? That hard structure will start getting rocking. It will start rocking. Why? Because mucosa will get compressed 2 millimeter vertically down, whereas periodontal ligament will get only 0.25 mm vertically compressed. So this will create one leverage, or this will create one lever by which rotation will start in RPD. We can see that RPD will start getting rotated due to differential compressibility, and this will exert the undesired force not only to the mucosa and bone but also onto the adjacent natural dentition, and that is the inherent disadvantage of making any RPD tooth supported as well as on the tissue. Just now I told that the RPD can start rotating in vertical direction due to occlusal force, but that is not the only rotation which occurs in RPD inside patient's mouth. Due to oblique force as well as vertical and horizontal force, and the RPD can rotate in any direction, be it sagittal, frontal or horizontal direction. In sagittal plane, what happens that if fulcrum is present in the horizontal plane, then movement will be having on the sagittal plane. So we can understand this by one example. Suppose we tell patient to chew any sticky food or chewing gum. So what will happen? So due to that chewing gum, that mandibular RPD will start getting displaced towards the vertical or towards the maxillary arch. This is called as fulcrum on the horizontal plane, and movement of RPD is in the sagittal plane. Let us understand the movement of RPD in sagittal plane in a simpler way. Now here we can see that the rotational axis or fulcrum is present on both the premolars, and it is passing through the rest of the RPD. So if we have to divide the RPD, we can say, just for the sake of understanding the movement, we can say that anterior to this fulcrum, the part of RPD which lies anterior to this fulcrum is horseshoe shape black color major connector, and part of RPD which lies posterior to this fulcrum or rotational axis are nothing but our artificial teeth. So now, if patient chews some sticky food or patient chews some chewing gum, what will happen? The posterior artificial teeth will try to get lifted. So now just imagine the fulcrum is passing through these two rests, and the posterior part of RPD wants to get lifted. What will happen to anterior part of RPD? The anterior part of RPD, that is the mandibular major connector, that horseshoe shape, will try to go downward towards the cingulum of the natural dentition. So if we want to prevent the posterior part of RPD from getting lifted up, we have to prevent the movement of horseshoe shaped major connector from going down. So by incorporating or by designing some indirect retainer, we can prevent this horseshoe shaped anterior part of mandibular major connector from going down, and thereby the posterior part can be prevented from getting lifted up. This whole thing we will understand in our later part of e-class. If now patient bites or masticates on the right side, and suppose RPD of the left side gets lifted up, we say that fulcrum was present on the sagittal plane and rotation of this RPD happened in the vertical plane. Now, due to tongue or due to cheek, if RPD goes towards the cheek or towards the tongue inside, medial side, then we say that here again the movement is in the horizontal plane. So in all these three planes, or a combination of these three planes, our RPD can rotate, and if RPD rotates in any of the plane or all of the plane, it will exert undesirable force onto the hard structure, be it bone or be it uh, so to understand the rotation of RPD and thereby resultant undesirable force on adjacent tooth, let us understand few clinical situations. On top of the diagram, you can see that it is a diagram of distal extension RPD. So what happens if patient starts chewing or patient starts applying masticatory force? This whole RPD along with the rest and the clasp will act like as if a force is being applied on certain seesaw. Now, what is seesaw? If you look down, we can appreciate that there is a diagram of seesaw which contains one fulcrum which is present at the center in between the effort and resistance. That means that if effort is been applied, that means if force is been exerted on E point, then what will happen? F point, that is the rest in this RPD, will act as a fulcrum, and the R point or the point of the clasp, tip of the clasp, will act as a resistance arm, and R point will try to get lifted up. So what will happen? Now this R point is inside the undercut because it is a clasp. So clasp tip has to be inside the undercut. So what will happen if suppose this clasp is inside the undercut and the force is to upright, it will try to exert undurable force or undesirable force onto this natural dentition, and this natural dentition slowly will fail. It may start getting periodontally degraded. So distal extension cases of RPD often give a leverage of class 1 lever. This is called as class 1 lever. So what is class 1 lever? Class 1 lever is when fulcrum is in between effort and resistance. So this is the most simplest and most effective type of lever. What does it mean? Most effective type of lever. It means that little bit of effort if we apply, more amount of resistance we can get if the lever arm is been increased. Archimedes was one philosopher who said once that if you give me long enough a lever arm and strong enough a fulcrum, then I myself, that is Archimedes himself alone, can lift this whole world. So that is the power of class 1 lever. So now here, if we understand that in distal extension case, the class 1 lever will generate. Now what is this class 1 lever? That little bit of masticatory force may try to exert lot of force on the natural dentition. In day-to-day practice, in daily living, class 1 lever is considered to be the most effective type of machine. That means small amount of force can generate maximum reaction or resistance. But if same thing happens intraorally, then it is quite degenerative to the oral tissues. We do not want that one small amount of masticatory force should get magnified and more amount of resistance or reactive force should get generated on the natural dentition. So we want that class 1 lever not to occur in distal extension case. Now question is, how can we minimize this occurrence of class 1 lever? Is there anything which we can do for minimizing this class 1 lever? Yes, we have two more levers. We called it as class 2 lever and class 3 lever. We'll understand this in next slides. This is the example. This is the example of class 2 lever or lever of second class. So what is the change here? Change is that fulcrum is not in the center of resistance and effort. Fulcrum is at the end, and here resistance is in between the effort and the fulcrum. So just by changing the position of fulcrum from the center to one end, we can convert the class 1 lever into class 2 lever. And this class 2 lever is considered to be mechanically less effective than class 1 lever. That means here more amount of effort is required to magnify the force. So here you can look downward, and in that photograph you can see that just by changing the position of fulcrum from the distal to the mesial part, we can shift the fulcrum to one end, and thereby we can shift the class 1 lever or convert this class 1 lever into class 2 lever. And now this is called the designing of RPD, that we designed our fulcrum to be at the end of the this lever mechanics. So this type of designing will generate less leverage and less amount of undesirable force due to rotation will occur. That is why it is considered that in intraoral situation, a lever of second class, that is class 2 lever, is more desirable than class 1 lever because it generates less undesirable force than class 1 lever. This is actually an example of class 3 lever. A lever of third class is considered to be the most safest type of lever intraorally. Safest means, that means more amount of force is required to magnify the force at the resistance level. So how it is different in other class 1 and class 2 lever is that here Just like in class 2, fulcrum is at the end, but in the middle is the effort. So here we can say that if intraorally we have to change our class 1 or class 2 lever into class 3, then we have to change the position of the rest, that which acts as a fulcrum, as well as the resistance point, that is a clasp tip, and in between we have to bring the RPD where masticatory force or effort is being applied. So again I am repeating it that class 3 lever is most a desirable type of lever because it produces least magnified force on the natural dentation, and that is why it is considered to be most safest type of lever. So if again to repeat it, if we have to design one RPD, first what we have to do, we have to find out where the fulcrum is, then how the lever is being activated, whether it is right now a class 1 or class 2. If it is a class 1 lever, then change the design of RPD in such a way that fulcrum or the resistance arm gets shifted, and thereby you can change class 1 or class 2 lever into class 3. This is a basic of RPD design. This is what we have to do it. This is what is actually biomechanics in RPD, that we have to find out where the rotational force is being exerted and we have to minimize those forces. So we understood that stress will get developed due to occurrence of lever, whether it is class 1, class 2 or class 3. If class 1 lever is there, that means that it is dangerous. So we have to convert it into class 2 or class 3. Now we'll understand what makes this lever to happen, or what starts or magnifies the stress inside the oral cavity. So there are so many factors which can magnify the undesirable forces, and these are quantity of edentulous span, quantity we'll discuss in detail, quality of edentulous span, abutment position, and retention mechanism. That means by mechanism by which RPD gets retention from the abutment teeth. So quantity of edentulous span means the amount or length of the edentulous span. We all know in distal extension case, as seen in this photograph, if the length of the edentulous span is bigger, more amount of undesirable force will get generated. Similarly, quality of edentulous span says how is the histological behavior of the soft tissue beneath the RPD. That means mucosa is keratinized, non-keratinized or parakeratinized. If it is keratinized, it can take up maximum amount of load. It can bear the forces without generating much force or without transmitting much force. It is just like a shock absorber. At the same time, underlying bone, whether it is cortical or cancellous or combination. So if it is pure cortical bone, then it can take up maximum amount of load without transferring it to the adjacent structure. Third is abutment position. On the top, you can see that there is quadrilateral configuration of RPD. Quadrilateral configuration of RPD means that edentulous uh, uh, portion is there. So both anterior and posterior to edentulous portion, we have abutment teeth. So here what will happen? The fulcrum, we always know that rest will act as a fulcrum. We understood in our leverage mechanics that rest acts as a fulcrum. So here what will happen? That both the fulcrum from the anterior rests and the posterior rests, they will try to nullify each other's effect, and this will be the most stable type of RPD. Here not much of rotatory force, or we can say that biomechanical leverage we can see. But if we see down in the left side photograph, we see that it is a Kennedy class 1 partial edentulous situation. Here we can say that the maximum amount of leverage we can see, because this left side photograph gives a clear cut picture of class 1 lever, whereas if you see the right bottom side of picture, we can see there is a triangular type of design, wherein not much of lever is seen in comparison to class 2. So we can say that class 2 partial identialism is safer than class 1, and class 3 mod 1 is considered to be safest type of RPD design in terms of biomechanical principle. So ultimate goal of any RPD design is to minimize the lever effort. Again, I am repeating it, that ultimate goal of design is to minimize the lever effort. That means if class 1 lever is there, we have to design in such a way that either we change the fulcrum, we change the effort, or we change the resistance in order to get or convert class 1 lever into class 2 or class 3. Now, principle of Smith was the person who gave the principles of RPD design, and it said that the dentist must have knowledge before we start designing any RPD or before we understand the biomechanics of RPD. And what all knowledge we should have? We should have the histological knowledge, the amount of compressibility of any tissue, as well as the anatomical knowledge. Second, it says that treatment plan must be based on intraoral examination. It means that dentist himself or herself should examine and find out which all area will generate lever, which all area may rotate the RPD. Because on the cast, a technician cannot understand the difference in compressibility. On cast, everything looks same. Even the mucosa looks hard, even the tooth looks hard. So a technician cannot understand, okay, this area, the compressibility is more compared to that area. So a dentist should know the amount of compressibility. Dentist should examine intraorally, and he or she only should do the designing. A removable partial denture after the design must restore the form and function, and that too without injury to the remaining oral structure. Here also we have to follow the Devans principle. And the last one, that removable partial denture designing is a form of treatment and it is not a cure. RPD, though, if after proper designing, we can give it for a prolonged period of time. But it is not always that we can just give and forget. We have to keep on recalling the patient and check the property of the hard and soft tissue, because we know that with time the properties, the biological property, the histological property of both hard tissue and soft tissue changes under load. So we have to keep on adjusting our RPD. These are few principles of designing of RPD which was given by A.H. Smith. One very important aspect of biomechanics of RPD design is philosophies of RPD design. Three philosophies which was given for RPD designing or to understand the biomechanics of RPD, and further to minimize this rotational force or to minimize this lever action. And these philosophies are stress equalization philosophy, physiological basing philosophy, and broad stress equalization philosophy. As the name suggests, that we should design our RPD in such a way that stress gets equalized by incorporating certain types of device known as stress equalizer. So what is that device? Stress equalizer is a device which relieves the specific dental structure of occlusal force either completely or partially, and redirects these occlusal forces or any forces onto the RPD to other area wherever we want these forces to go. So we'll understand this by few photographs. Now we'll see this. Now here in the topmost photograph, we can see that there is hinge type of joint present in the RPD itself. So what will happen? The hinge joint is present between the part of RPD which is resting onto the tooth and part of the RPD which is resting onto the edentulous area. So whenever occlusal or masticatory force will be applied to this particular design, what will happen due to compression, differentiation of compression, only the part of RPD which is resting onto the soft tissue will get compressed and force will not transmit to the natural adjacent tooth where the other part of RPD is supported, and thereby we can protect our natural dentition. So in this way we broke our stress, that we limited our stress to occur only on the bone part or edentulous part. So we call it as stress breaker also, or we can say that that stress is not going to get dissipated or not going to get travel to the natural dentition, because we do not want our natural dentition to get much stress. Example, another example is our split major connector. In this design we can say that if we give this type of major connector, what will happen? Only the part of the occlusal force will get directed to the natural dentition, and majority of the occlusal force remain in the edentulous, partially edentulous area itself, and thereby we can minimize the force, we can minimize the effect of this rotation onto the natural adjacent tissue. Thereby we can minimize the lever principle, we can minimize the leverage, and that is the goal of our design. So stress equalization or stress breaking concept says that we should redirect our stress in such a way that it should not completely go to one part. Wherever we want our particular area to get maximum amount of force, we'll get it. The advantage of stress equalization philosophy says that because of that there is breaking of stress, it has a massaging or stimulating effect on the edentulous part of the RPD area. So that means that due to stimulation or massaging, the bone or the mucosa will remain healthy due to increased blood supply. And the disadvantage of stress breaking philosophy is that it is quite complex design. We have to incorporate a new device, we call it as a stress breaker or a stress equalizer, so it becomes quite costly. At the same time, maintenance is too much, and if something happens, we cannot repair it. So these are the few disadvantages of this particular philosophy. Second philosophy says that physiological basing philosophy. What it says that we have to impress the edentulous ridge in functional form, and if we impress that, if we record that mucosa in functional form and we make one cast, and if on that cast we make one RPD, the RPD will be designed in such a way that it is always sitting onto the compressed mucosa. For example, here, if we see that in photograph A, there is mucosa which is present and which may get compressed up to 2 millimeter on functional force. So what we will do during impression making only, we will compress that mucosa on up to 2 millimeter. That further on functional force, it will not get compressed, and we'll make one impression in compressed form. We'll acquire the cast, and on that cast we'll make one RPD. So this RPD, whenever patient will wear that RPD will always keep the mucosa in compressed form. So there will not be much of difference in compressibility, and thereby we can prevent the rotational force to occur. The design of the advantage of this particular philosophy is very simple. It is during impression making itself, we can say that okay, we have incorporated this design, we took care of the mucosa, the compressibility of mucosa, and we compressed it in the beginning only. So it is simple in design. We did not do anything much, only we changed the method of impression making. But the disadvantage is what will happen when patient is not masticating. Patient is in rest position. So due to sponginess of the mucosa, RPD will, what will happen to the RPD? RPD will get lifted up. So if RPD gets lifted up, patient will start getting, patient will feel uncomfortable. At the same time, patient will always have premature contact when mouth is closed for the first time. So the problem will be that always whenever patient will bite, that time, okay, fine, force will not get generated much as per the leverage is concerned. But when patient is not biting, that time the RPD will be little bit above the occlusal plane, and it will give a sense of instability, and thereby it will create uncomfortable feeling to the patient. Third philosophy says broad stress distribution. Name itself suggests that we should extend our RPD to maximum level or maximum area. So what will happen? Even though stress will generate, the stress will get distributed evenly. That means what we call it as per unit area, the stress will be less. Something called as snowshoe effect. All of us must have seen snowshoe, which mountaineers they wear it during climbing a snowy mountain or snow peak. What happens that this snowshoe they have a broader coverage, so the per unit area per unit area the force gets dissipated and leg does not sink inside the snow. The same thing happens here. So since the RPD is extended to maximum area, so stress will be distributed and there will not be any leverage onto the adjacent natural dentation. What is the advantage of this? The advantage of this particular philosophy, that okay, stress is properly distributed and good stabilization we can get it because of extensive RPD design. But the disadvantage of this philosophy, disadvantages are that it is less comfortable and it requires good maintenance of oral hygiene due to extensive coverage of RPD inside the oral structure. No one would like to wear a bigger RPD. That is the biggest drawback of this particular philosophy. So now we understood that minimizing the leverage force and minimizing the biomechanical force from RPD to the oral structure is considered as designing of one RPD. So how to design one RPD to reduce the force, undesirable force? So first we have to examine the intraoral structures, examine the hard tissue and soft tissue, the biological property, whether compressibility is there or not, whether it is healthy or not to take up the support, whether it is healthy or not to take the retention. Then find out the support part on the natural dentition, where you want to take support from natural dentition. That is the rest seat. So that rest seat will be now the point of rotation or the fulcrum. Now find out that what is the existing lever present, whether it is class 1, class 2 or class 3. If class 1 lever is there, then change the design of your RPD or change the component of RPD in such a way that the class 1 lever gets converted into class 2 or class 3 by changing the position of either the resistance point or the effort point or the fulcrum point. Why it is important? To prevent the rotation or to prevent the hazardous force which may occur due to rotation of RPD. And bingo, this is the design of RPD. So if you have understood the facts which we had discussed, now it is a time to scratch your brain and answer few questions. The first question is, which type of lever is hazardous for oral structure? The question is, which type of lever is hazardous for oral structure? So answer would be the class 1 lever. What is class 1 lever? Where the fulcrum is present in between the effort and resistance. And why it is hazardous? Because little bit of force will magnify the reaction. So that is why it is hazardous for oral structure. But in day-to-day life, outside of oral cavity, it is very good for human being. Second question is, why a technician in laboratory cannot design a specific RPD? In another word, who should design a RPD? The answer would be that oral specialist or dentist only should design the RPD after proper intraoral examination. Why? Because intraoral examination will give the exact idea of the biological property of oral structures. And that is why on cast a laboratory technician cannot design the specific RPD, because it cannot, or he cannot understand the biomechanics of RPD. Third question, split cast major connector is based on which philosophy of RPD design? Split cast major connector is based on the stress equalization philosophy, which says that the stress should get equalized between the edentulous part and the abutment natural tooth. I will further suggest that Stewart's clinical removal partial prosthodontics or McCracken can be referred for in detail understanding of biomechanics of RPD. These two are good books for at undergraduate level. Thank you everyone for patient listening. If you have any query, you can directly contact me on the number given on the screen, or you can write me on my mail ID. Thank you once again.